Hello and welcome to Renew, the show about the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University. The College of Forest Resources promotes and enables the conservation, management, and wise use of our natural resources. I'm your host, Leslie Berger. Today's show will feature one of the three departments that is within the College of Forest Resources, the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture. Here to represent that department is graduate student Shannon Westlake. Thank you for joining me today, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
I'm glad you're able to come. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be here at Mississippi State. I know your path is a little different, but I think it's important for people to understand that there isn't really a set right way. There might be better ways or not so good ways, but your path has been a little different. So would you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. My path is not traditional. It's more of a zigzag than the straight and arrow. But that's been beneficial because I've learned a lot of skills along the way and the different things that I've done. So my undergrad was typical, went to right after high school and went for 4 years studying biology. I'm a tree hugger at heart, always have been. So I wanted to study that. And then once I graduated, I wasn't quite sure what to do with my life, the unfortunate issue of most college graduates. So I went to work for a Fortune 500 company making glass and doing research in that, which was really interesting. And during that time, I decided I wanted to get back to my tree hugging roots and do my master's. So I did my master's online through a college called Green Mountain College, and it was a bioregional focus, which was really neat because my home was my laboratory. So for our projects and for our skill-based learning, it was all based in our own home regions. So we had to study the issues that were going around in our regions. I was going out to our national forests to do projects and study issues like the hemlock woolly adelgid. So that really gave me a lot more skills on top of what I was learning during my day job at Corning. And then from then, I decided to do a master's project with pollinator gardening. And I really wanted to help the local citizens in an urban area learn more about pollinators and about gardening and really emphasize the connection to food. So a lot of people, they've probably been aware of the fact of a third of the bites of food each day come from pollinated food. So people are all linked to pollinators whether they realize it or not. Sure. So for us, we wanted to do this project where we would create both pollinator and food gardens at a community center. And that way we can raise the awareness and get people doing hands-on activities, and then especially for students. So we engaged kindergartners all the way up through college students that came out to help. And then I realized the work I was doing was human dimensions work without realizing it. Sure. And so I built a pollinator gardening guide and just really got interested in learning about why people aren't doing this more often. I mean, it's fun, it connects them to nature, everybody loves to eat, why is everybody not doing this? And that's what kind of led me down here to what I do here is human dimensions research with Dr. Hunt. And we look at, those human aspects of, are there constraints? Is it people's attitudes keeping them out of doing these things? What is it? So my study here has been focused on Mississippi landholders, and it's looking at what are they or aren't they adopting in the state as far as these pollinator conservation practices. There's a lot of things we can do to support pollinators, from planting gardens or doing some larger things like constructing field borders, using conservation tillage, creating brush piles even. So there's a lot of these different practices that can support pollinators, and I really wanted to look at what's going on in Mississippi. Are these practices being used? Are people aware of them? Do they have knowledge around them? And it's kind of just spun off from there. Right.
So you're pretty far along in this practice. This process. You're learning now, getting what the results are trying to tell you.
Yes.
So what are some of the big picture takeaway things that you're learning?
Yep. So as I kind of expected, it's really constraints. So we had pretty positive attitudes toward pollinators and their practices. We had people who have some what they call social norm pressures. So it's like people around them are doing it or expecting them to do it, so they feel the need to do it. But the constraints was one of the biggest one, that and knowledge. People may be aware because I feel like we've been inundated with information about pollinators. I mean, even this week is National Pollinator Week.
Right.
So there's tons of information about pollinators and why they're important out there, but we're missing that tangible connection of what people can do. So they're aware, they like them, but how do I actually get involved? That's what seemed to be popping in my survey was, people not having the time, the resources, the skills, or the knowledge to actually do these practices.
Right. And in your survey, just to clarify this, you're not looking at just the average residents. You're looking at people that own larger tracts of land above how many acres?
So we set a minimum at 25 acres, mostly because the larger contiguous habitat is better for pollinators. The little small pockets of habitat can be beneficial, but some of them don't have wide ranges. So you want to make sure that they have sufficient habitat to be able to forage and nest in, and then protect it, especially if it's in agricultural areas, from chemical drift and things like that.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to come back after a break, and I want you to tell us a little bit more about some of the stuff that you're doing more locally here on campus. So we're going to take just a small break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes to learn a little bit more about Shannon's work with pollinators.
Want a career as big as the outdoors? Want to have an impact on the environment? The College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University delivers hands-on training, ensuring clean air and water, wildlife habitats, and a sustainable environment. Creating new wood products and retooling old ones for today and tomorrow. Find a career in whatever path you choose. Majors in forestry, natural resource and environmental conservation, sustainable bioproducts, wildlife, fisheries, and aquaculture. Want a career as big as the outdoors? Choose the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University.
Discovery. It tells our history and determines our future. At Mississippi State University, we're digging deep, unlocking an understanding of our past, validating it. Middle East exploration by faculty and students is uncovering evidence that unravels ancient mysteries. Scholars have long thought of the biblical kings David and Solomon as mythological figures. Our research offers evidence that supports their existence, boosting MSU into an international league of experts on archaeology. Now we're changing the way people think about the past, opening up new possibilities of understanding for future generations. Digging deeper, learning more.
Hello and welcome back to Renew, the show about the College of Forest Resources. Today's show is featuring the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture, and joining me is graduate student Shannon Westlake. Shannon, before the break we were talking about pollinators, and people probably have an image of bees when we talk about pollinators, but it's a broader grouping than just bees. So would you define that?
Yeah, sure. So when I'm referring to native pollinators in my study, it's mostly about insects, native insects. But pollinators can be a variety of different species. So most people probably immediately think of the European honeybee that we see that are managed colonies. But there's over 4,000 species of native bees in the United States. And then especially in Mississippi, I think we have like 12 bumblebee species. But there's also others. So there's butterflies and moths can be pollinators, even some wasps, flies, beetles. There are some mammals, bats, birds, lizards even, and then human. I mean, if you're moving pollen, I guess you could be a pollinator.
Sure.
So there's a lot of different species, over 200,000 worldwide actually. The majority of those are insect species. So when I'm talking about my work, it's mostly these insect species, and especially native bees, because they're just the most efficient at doing this.
Right. So in the absence of some mechanism to transfer the pollen from one plant to the other, they aren't fertilized, they don't produce the fruit. And when you are making the reference to food, you're talking about things like fruits and coffee and chocolate.
Chocolate.
Most
Everybody
importantly,
loves chocolate.
You know, so there's a whole bunch of things that we rely on for our daily food sources.
Right.
That in the absence of having pollinators, we either don't get as many, we might still get it, but we don't get the quantity, or we just simply don't have them. And
Exactly.
so we're facing declining pollinator numbers, and for a variety of reasons. Could you hit just on a few of those top reasons for why pollinators are kind of in the news, why we have a whole week dedicated to pollinators?
Yep. Two of the biggest ones that have been cited are habitat loss and chemical use. So it's like I was mentioning earlier, with us looking at the contiguous habitat, by having habitat fragmentation across the landscape, these pollinators can't get from one patch to the other. So if you have species die out in one area and they can't range, and the flowers and then the pollinators can't range, they can't get to another food source. So it's really important. And then also chemical use. So with this big push for food security and feeding more people, people need to produce more. So as you deplete soils, you need to use more chemicals and fertilizers in order to make them more nutrient rich to grow this food. But those types of things can have adverse effects on pollinators, especially when it comes to drifts or herbicides on flowers that they need.
Okay. So we can do some things on a small scale, and you brought some pictures of some work that's happening on Mississippi State campus as a kind of demonstration plots.
Yes.
And so we're going to put up these pictures, and this is kind of a before shot here outside of one of the structures on campus, and that doesn't look unlike really a well landscaped yard that you might see here anywhere in the Southeast.
Right.
But that's not good enough, and now we have the start of something different.
Right.
So what are in these large rectangular squares you have here, and what might a private landowner want to do with something like this on their property?
Yep, so it's really important when you're doing pollinator work that you're covering each of the seasons. So you want to have flowers that are blooming in spring, summer, and fall. So here we're covering all the seasons here. We have lance-leaf tickseed, we have New England aster, we have goldenrod, some milkweed, important for monarchs, blazing stars, salvia. We just have a whole I think there's 20 different species in those plots. So it's really important to be able to cover this range so you can support different pollinators, and landowners can get a lot of these seeds or these plant at nurseries to plant on their own property.
Okay, what are some things they need to keep in the back of their head then? Some people might say that it's kind of weedy, or get out there with the Roundup. Is that a good plan?
Right. So I was actually out there last week weeding by hand, and yeah, of course, it can take more time to do it manually, but by not using those chemicals, you're allowing those plants to grow and get really going. So especially with perennials, they may take a year or two to really get going, but once they do, they provide such beautiful habitat, and you can have flowers year-round that you can enjoy by planting the different seasons as well.
Well, Shannon, we have 1 minute left. Would you like to share with everybody an initiative you're working on campus called Bee Campus?
Sure. So I'm working with you and a few different others here on campus to try to get Mississippi State certified as a bee campus. Bee Campus is an initiative of the Xerces Society to foster ongoing dialogue about pollinator conservation and to get more people aware and involved with these habitat projects and these different educational opportunities. So here at Mississippi State, we're already doing so much for pollinators, but we are doing them in these separate little pockets. So this will help to pull together these united and make a united endeavor for this to raise more awareness and get more people involved in these different projects.
Well, I'm looking forward to see how this all transpires, and under your leadership, I'm sure it's going to be amazing, because you're just a joy to have here in the department. So I appreciate you being here with us today at Renew. Hope the rest of you have learned a little bit more about pollinators and the important role that they have in your day-to-day lives, as well as the ecosystems at large. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State, and that you'll join us again at Renew in the future. My name is Leslie Berger, and I've been your host.